I spent hours researching Jalen Hurts and how he managed to turn his career around, from being a fringe starter to an MVP caliber player, and actually running up for the award last year. Stick around to find out exactly how Jalen Hurts managed to turn his career around into a complete 180. Well, in order to know how, we have to look back into his early years of life. Being born on August 7th of 1998 in quite a large city, that being Houston, Texas. That gives us our first bout of knowledge into Jalen Hurts' early life. Everything's always bigger in Texas. That's how the saying goes. Being a high school football player in Texas is not easy, but Jalen made it look easy. In just his senior year of high school, he would throw for 2,384 yards with 26 touchdowns, and on the ground, he was unstoppable as well, rushing for 1,391 yards and 25 touchdowns. By the end of his high school career, he would be deemed as a 4-star recruit, but his raw talent was more than enough to get him self-recruited to 21 schools, the biggest ones being Texas, Texas Tech, and Alabama, where we all know Jalen Hurts would take his talents. While yes, going to Alabama is exciting, it's never just that easy to go to Alabama, especially as a quarterback considering the amount of competition that you have. And as a redshirt freshman, they hadn't started in 28 years, I think it was something like that, before Jalen Hurts got there. But I digress, and as a redshirt freshman, Hurts would be fighting for a starting job against the likes of Blake Barnett. There's a reason he won the starting job, guys. Where Hurts would eventually win the starting nod in week 2 of the college football season. In just his first season, he would throw for 2,700 yards and 23 touchdowns to just 9 interceptions. Just like in high school, though, he was also an incredible running quarterback, rushing for 954 yards and 13 touchdowns, breaking many records along the way in Alabama school history. Alabama would go on to the national championship that year to face Clemson and would eventually lose that game. After having a great freshman season, Jalen Hurts wouldn't stop there. He'd come out swinging to have an even better sophomore season. In his sophomore season of college, he was just as dominating, leading Alabama to an 11-1 season and taking them all the way to the promised land of the championship once again. Against Georgia this time, though. After falling down to the Bulldogs 13-0 early, he would get benched for the likes of Tua Tagovailoa. The Crimson would go on to come back in this game thanks to the defense and Tua's heroics. And the benching of Hurts would last a whole other year going into his junior season, where Tua would remain the starter. Unfortunately for Hurts, Alabama made that decision to keep Tua as the starter for his entire junior season. And fortunately for Hurts, because he was smart, he decided to move his talents elsewhere. After having enough of riding the bench, Jalen Hurts would announce his plan to transferring to Oklahoma. Boy, did that work out well for Hurts. Immediately winning the starting job just a year removed from Baker Mayfield. In just his first start, he would shatter a school record for the most yardage in a single game, putting up over 508 yards of offense just himself. Hurts would continue his dominance all season long, helping the Sooners go to the college football playoffs where they would go on and get destroyed by the Joe Burrow-led LSU Tigers. Frankly, I really can't blame the Sooners, as that LSU team might have been one of the most loaded teams in college history. He would go on to come up just short of winning the Heisman Trophy behind Joe Burrow. His college career would start the trend of coming up just short, not only in championships, but also in awards. Leading up to that draft, I do find it kind of funny that Jalen Hurts managed to fall all the way to the second round after being second in Heisman voting and after having great college and high school stats and even having a really good combine. He still managed to fall all the way to the second round. Being drafted 53rd overall in the second round of the NFL draft, led by the Philadelphia Eagles nonetheless, led to a lot of fans like myself being confused because the Eagles had already had their franchise guy in Carson Wentz. Now, granted, he did have a down season or whatnot, but just a couple years prior, they won a Super Bowl with Carson Wentz as the primary starter, and on top of that, he almost won the MVP award that year, so it left a lot of us with confusion. At first, Hurts was named the third string quarterback, but that wouldn't last for long as the Eagles realized they could utilize Hurts in many more ways, more prominently in the running attack. Because of that, they moved him up to the second string quarterback to back up Wentz just in case anything happened. That would happen later rather than sooner, but that's better than never. In week 13 of the 2020 NFL season, the Eagles would face the Packers. Carson Wentz played so horrendously that the Eagles figured, why not give this Hurts kid a chance? Hurts would take advantage of this chance and never look back. He would be named the starter for the rest of the season and for the future seasons as well, never losing that role again. He would finish 2020 with just 1,000 passing yards, throwing for 6 touchdowns to 4 interceptions. Once again, his legs proved to be his best weapon, rushing for 354 yards and 3 touchdowns. He did all this in just 4.5 games. Those numbers don't really jump out on screen or paper for that matter. That's not bad for a rookie quarterback who just dropped in with literally 5 games left of the season. While not making a huge difference, as the Eagles would still lose 4 out of their 5 games with Hurts as a starter and miss the playoffs. As the start of the 2021 NFL season rolled around, the Philadelphia Eagles made the move in trading Carson Wentz over to the Indianapolis Colts. Now, they did this to solidify the fact that they're sticking behind Jalen Hurts. And on some not so important news, Jalen Hurts would change his number from 2 to 1. With the 10th overall pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Eagles would select Heisman Trophy winner Devonta Smith to give Hurts some weapons. Hurts would go on to have an up and down season, especially throwing, as he only threw for a little over 3,000 yards, just 16 touchdowns to 9 interceptions. Which isn't ideal as an NFL starter, but running the rock, he looked amazing, running for nearly 800 yards and also rushing for 10 more touchdowns. While his passing numbers weren't the best, Hurts definitely gave a lot of reason for the Eagles franchise and also the franchise to be excited for the future. He would help lead the Eagles to a 9-8 season into the playoffs, where they would lose to the Tom Brady-led Buccaneers in the wild card round with a final score of 31-15. Even though throughout his first 2 quote seasons in the NFL, you could say that he didn't necessarily look that great, the fact of the matter is it didn't matter. He showed potential. And this year, he turned it around 180 and completely just blew everybody's expectations out of the water. Fast forward to this season, the Eagles realized that they had a stud. All they needed to do was get him more weapons, and that's exactly what they would do. The Eagles have already had a top-tier O-line for many years, so they would shift their focus to wide receiver. In order to do that, they would trade their first-round pick and a third-round pick to the Tennessee Titans for star receiver A.J. Brown. The Eagles would also give Brown a 4-year, $100 million contract. That wasn't the only moves the Eagles would make this offseason, bolstering their defense by acquiring the likes of James Bradberry via contract, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson via trade with the Saints, and re-signing many key pieces such as Kaiser White, Fletcher Cox, and Anthony Harris. Knowing that this year would be special, the Eagles went all in. Now it was all up to Jalen Hurts to make that magic happen. Jalen Hurts and the Philadelphia Eagles would come out swinging, starting their season 8-0 along the way, with Jalen Hurts being an MVP-type candidate. He did not disappoint, and none of the Eagles did disappoint until they lost their first game against the Washington Commanders. In just 15 games, he would throw for 3,700 yards with 33 touchdowns to only 6 interceptions through the air. But you guessed it, his legs were what made him even more dangerous, rushing for 760 yards along with another 13 rushing touchdowns. Side note, as a starter, Hurts would go 14-1 in the regular season. He proved to everyone across the NFL that he was a force to be reckoned with. He catapulted the Eagles to the number 1 seed in the NFC, and then he proceeded to push them into the Super Bowl by demolishing foes like the New York Giants and San Francisco 49ers. The Hurts-led Eagles were on their way to the Super Bowl, as they definitely deserved so. Now, this Super Bowl was one for the ages, where we saw the Philadelphia Eagles, number 1 seed in the NFC, face off against the Kansas City Chiefs, the number 1 seed in the AFC. Both quarterbacks, being Jalen Hurts and Patrick Mahomes, were electric in their own ways, and this was definitely something fans wanted to see all year round. This would lead to the greatest performance by Jalen Hurts in his entire career thus far. Early on, he would then throw an absolute beautiful ball down the field to A.J. Brown on their next drive for a 48-yard touchdown connection, putting the Eagles up 14-7. After a 3-and-out by the Chiefs offense, the Eagles were rolling and looked unstoppable. But here is where Jalen Hurts would make the biggest mistake of his young career, fumbling the ball, where the Chiefs would scoop and score to tie the game lead. The Chiefs would then, again, fail on their next drive, and the Eagles would take over, and Hurts would drive them downfield to score a field goal to go up 24-14 at halftime. This is where the Chiefs would take over the game and run the football game their way, going on a 21-3 run after halftime to give the Chiefs a 35-27 lead with just 9 minutes left in the game. Jalen Hurts wasn't having it, though. He needed to win this game. Being down by 8, Hurts would lead a magical 8-play, 75-yard drive, leading to a QB sneak touchdown where the Eagles would then have to attempt a 2-point conversion to tie the game. Jalen Hurts would once again rush the ball in to complete the conversion, tying the game at 35. The Chiefs would then wind up driving down the field, kicking what would be the game-winning field goal, even despite the controversial holding call. With just 8 seconds left and the Eagles having no timeouts, the game was essentially over despite a miracle. Unfortunately for Hurts, who did not have enough arm power in his throwing arm, wouldn't be able to get the ball downfield to his receivers. The Eagles would then lose the Super Bowl. It would later come out that Hurts was still fighting his shoulder injury that had sidelined him earlier this season, finishing his 2022 season with earning nods to his second team All-Pro, a Pro Bowl, second in MVP voting, and third in Offensive Player of the Year voting, while also just falling short of winning the Super Bowl. Looking at Hurts' career summed up, more specifically his professional career, he completely turned it QB. What I mean by that is he doesn't just run every time he sees an opening, and he doesn't just pass whenever the pocket collapses. His awareness is leveled up, and he's now making the smart play that will get the team more yards and set them up for better success. Jalen Hurts has become elite.